Hello boys and girls. Today we shall learn how to score high marks in a poem. I shall take the example of Daffodils, a famous poem by the nature poet William Wordsworth. In this video, I'll cover those key elements which will help you in scoring well in the examination. This lyrical poem celebrates the beauty of nature. The poet's experience of encountering a belt of golden daffodils and its healing impact has been elevated in this poem. So let's get started. Let me take you through the poem. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high o'er vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils. The lonely poet was roaming around aimlessly in the countryside, just like a piece of cloud that floats high above the hills and valleys as if without any purpose. When all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, it is then he suddenly encountered a large number of golden daffodils. The word host implies that the poet was perhaps in the land of daffodils. And the word golden symbolizes the magical impact of the daffodils on the poet. Beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. Where did he see the daffodils? He saw the daffodils growing along the margin of a lake, underneath the trees. In what state did he see them? He saw them dancing, tossing their heads, perhaps rejoicing. The opening line of the poem states that the poet is lonely. Could the sight of the rejoicing and dancing daffodils change the mood of the poet? Let's find out. Let's understand the key expressions of stanza 1 through rapid fire question technique. Who's I, the poet? To what has he compared himself? A cloud that floats over hills and valleys. What did he see? Suppose you say daffodils. That's not the complete answer. You must say a host of golden daffodils. Where? Beside the lake, beneath the trees. In what state? Fluttering and dancing in the breeze. Throw light on the mood of the poet. If you give an answer like the poet is sad, then you need to justify. He's sad because he was feeling lonely. Let's understand the poetic devices from stanza 1. The first one is a simile. Here the poet compares himself as well as his loneliness to a cloud. As a cloud floats aimlessly, he too walked around in the countryside without any definite purpose. The concept of loneliness is established by showing that the cloud is detached as it floats far above the hills and valleys. The second one is an alliteration. Alliteration is use of repetitive consonant sound. Here, as you can see, the consonant sound H of high and hill is marked in red. The third one is a personification. Personification is to give human attribute to an inanimate thing or an abstract concept. In this case, the daffodils have been personified because they exhibit the human trait of dancing. Continuous as the stars that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way, they stretched in never-ending line along the margin of a bay. The second stanza also opens with a simile. The poet compares the innumerable dazzling daffodils to the uncountable shining and twinkling stars that we see in the night sky. The daffodils appear continuous and indistinguishable as they were very close to one another, just like the shining stars that we see on the Milky Way. As far as the poet's eyes could reach, he saw the line of daffodils growing along the margin, that is, along the shoreline of a lake. 10,000 saw I at a glance, tossing their heads in sprightly dance. The poet uses poetic exaggeration here to highlight abundance. That is, at one glance, he could see a large number of daffodils. These daffodils were swaying their heads as they were engaged in a very lively and energetic dance. The last line brings out the exuberance, the joy, the happiness exhibited by the daffodils. Comparing the daffodils to the stars reveals the heavenly appeal of the daffodils. Use of expressions like continuous and never ending imply that this enchanting sight left an everlasting impression on the poet. A quick recap of stanza 2. To what has the poet compared the daffodils? To stars that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way. Where did he see the daffodils? Along the margin of a bay. What's the significance of the number 10,000? It refers to a large number, innumerable. On what note does the stanza end? The stanza ends on a positive, happy note because the daffodils were engaged in a sprightly dance. Let's look at the poetic devices used in stanza 2. The first one is a simile, continuous as the stars that shine. This simile is used to describe the daffodils spread continuously like the shining stars that twinkle in the night sky. The second one is a hyperbole. It is an exaggeration of ideas for the sake of emphasis. Here the number 10,000 is used to comment on the abundance. The last one is personification. The daffodils have been personified as they were engaged in a sprightly dance and they were tossing their heads. So this is the human attribute which they were exhibiting. The waves beside them dance, but they outdid the sparkling waves in glee. The poet goes on to describe the enchanting quality of the daffodils. The rippling water of the lake seemed to be dancing. It was sparkling too, due to the rays of the sun. Here, sparkling can be associated with exuberance or joy expressed by the dancing waves. But the daffodils surpassed or outdid the waves in depicting their happiness through the happy dance. A poet could not but be gay in such a jocund company. A poet cannot experience any other emotion but be happy in such a jocund company. Here, jocund means cheerful. Wordsworth was very sensitive to the beauty of nature, and we see that how his mood changes as the poem progresses. I gazed and gazed, but little thought what wealth the show to me had brought. The word gazed has been used twice to indicate how engrossing the sight was for the poet. He was charmed by it and kept on looking and enjoying the sight. Now, this experience was a life enriching experience for him. But at this point of time, the poet did not realize it much. A quick revision of key phrases from this stanza. What danced beside the daffodils? The waves. What is the meaning of outdid? Surpassed? Performed better? How did the daffodils outdo the waves? The daffodils performed much better in their happy dance as far as expression of glee is concerned. How did the poet feel in the jocund company? Happy. Which show is the poet talking of? The show of dancing daffodils beside the dancing waves. Poetic device used in this stanza, personification. Here the waves as well as the daffodils are personified because they show human attribute of dancing. In this stanza, the poet highlights the fact that he is captivated by the beauty of the daffodils. The daffodils made an everlasting impact on him, which he did not realize when he was in the countryside. For oft, when on my couch I lie, in vacant or in pensive mood, They flash upon that inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude. For often, when the poet lies on his couch, either in a state of idleness or boredom, or in a contemplative mood, the daffodils appear in his mind. And the very mental picture of the dancing daffodils elevates the poet to a state of absolute happiness. He no more feels lonely. And then my heart with pleasure fills and dances with the daffodils. As he recalls the sight of the daffodils, he feels so elated that he too starts dancing and rejoicing with the daffodils. A quick look at the questions from stanza 4. What happens when he lies down in vacant or in pensive mood? The daffodils flash upon that inward eye. That is, the poet is able to visualize or recall the sight of the dancing daffodils. What do you mean by inward eye? In mind, in imagination, or in thought? What change do you observe in the poet's mood? The mood changes from pensive to joyful. The poet starts dancing with the dancing daffodils. What does it reflect about the poet? It reflects the poet's love for nature and his oneness with nature. Let me outline the central idea of the poem in a nutshell. Poet's love and oneness with nature. Only a nature poet can celebrate and value the beauty of nature. An ordinary experience of the poet has been sketched with extraordinary qualities. When he recalled the images of the dancing daffodils, he too started rejoicing with them. This shows his communion with nature, the healing and refreshing power of nature. As the poem progresses, the poet's mood changes from loneliness to happiness. Though in vacant or in pensive mood, he felt elated the moment he recalled the images of the dancing daffodils. Thus, the healing attribute of nature is quite evident. So, boys and girls, if you like this video, please do subscribe my channel and press the like button. God bless you.